Hello everybody, I'm Andy Murray from WhatCulture.com.
And I'm Michael Sidgwick from WhatCulture.com.
And we have just sat there consuming AEW's latest pay-per-view extravaganza, and what an extravagant ganza it was. Full Gear is in the books. It is 5 to 5 in the morning here in the United Kingdom, but we are fresh, we're awake, we're ready to go.
Committed.
We are ready to light the fuse, bring the boom, become the Judas in my mind, and never say die with the warrior cry with what went down at Full Gear. Got my notes, eating some oats, I am the goat, so let's begin the video, I guess.
Yes, let's do this very quickly.
Kick things off on the Bahrain Preshow. We basically, for the first half of this, was the full episode of Countdown to Full Gear that was uploaded to the YouTube channel earlier in the week. Really worth watching, really helped build further, particularly for Santana and Ortiz ahead of their match with the Young Bucks. It focused primarily on the top three matches, the biggest three matches on the card. That one, Moxley versus Omega, obviously, and Jericho versus Cody. Good little start, smart to put it on there, and it was also smart of them to put on a really good Britt Baker promo from Dark the other day as well, covering all the bases, but it wasn't new content. The first slab of new content we got was Britt Baker versus Bea Priestley, long-running beef stemming from the concussion that Britt suffered at Fight for the Fallen after a wayward knee to the head. Good match. Hard-hitting, brutal, felt like a feud-ending match, felt heated, felt intense. Couple of mistime moments here and there that we do need to mention, but in the end, Britt Baker winning the feud, lockjaw submission, ripping off the jaw as she promised to do in the build-up, and that was that.
Yes, I think it was very astute in telling of AEW. The very first two shows, the buy-ins were marred completely by broadly comedic elements. It was like a brochure to something that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Like AEW was going to be this brilliant thing, and they sold it with like really divisive comedy. MJF was great in those things, but you know, like a lot of the Battle Royal was just putrid comedy for a lot of people. I think this was a neat response to that. As for Britt Baker versus Bea Priestley, they really attempted to tell that story of Bea Priestley really trying to injure Britt Baker using her ingenuity to get out of those situations. That story fell a little bit flat because she's not the greatest technician, so you couldn't really believe a lot of it, but I think they worked incredibly hard. It was way smoother than I thought, way more heated, way more elegant. I was a fan to a degree.
Yeah, and the right spots got the right reactions in the end,
Indeed,
so mark it a success. Post-match angle that, you know, caused a bit of controversy, the Brandy Rhodes stuff on recent episodes of Dynamite. Lights cut out, big weird gothic music hits, Brandy comes out in a rather elaborate dress. She's got Awesome Kong with her. Awesome Kong has all these locks of hair tied around her waist, and they come in. Kong lays waste to Bea Priestley, takes a lock of her hair, adds it to the belt. I have no idea what I think of this angle at the moment, but they're continuing with it, and Brandy's a good manager, so maybe it'll be cool?
Maybe, jury's out. One thing I did notice is that on Dynamite a couple of weeks ago, she targeted, Brandy Rhodes that is, Jamie Hayter for losing the match against Britt Baker, so it's telling that she targeted Bea Priestley for losing the match against Britt Baker, so I'm presuming they're building towards Britt Baker versus Awesome Kong. Be careful out there.
Yeah, watch yourself. Main show, we kicked right in. We had the introductory video package, again highlighting proud and powerful promos from Ortiz and Santana, really getting their characters over. They needed a little bit more juice, I think, coming into this match, and they got it with the packages here. First match of the night, Pride and Powerful versus the Young Bucks. This really, like, stylistically wasn't what a lot of people were expecting. I think a lot of people were expecting the high spots, cocaine, adrenaline rush match. What we got was a really solidly worked and really well-built classic style tag match. You know, there were plenty of flippy-dippy doodads all the livelong day, but nowhere near as many as you would have thought. There was some really early foreshadowing earlier on. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, the Rock and Roll Express, were at ringside. They became a factor in an awesome thing that we'll discuss shortly after this. But yeah, no, it was a very good match. Much of it was built around Nick Jackson selling the leg after he went to boot Ortiz in the face. Ortiz moves. Nick hits the ring post, really solid thud as shin meets post. From there, he was hobbling all around the match. There were a couple of spots where he fired up. The adrenaline came through and he was able to fight through the pain, but in the end, it wasn't enough. One particularly memorable spot, a repeat of a New Japan spot he worked last year. He went onto the top rope looking for the Meltzer driver, tried the springboard, fell flat on his face. So Nick Jackson, ultimately the reason for their demise there, and it was a street sweeper on him with Ortiz getting the pin that scored the victory for PNP. Good match.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that they've used one of their old New Japan spots, because for me, this match was very on the level of their 2018 New Japan work, which I just thought, in terms of storytelling, the depth and the detail was absolutely phenomenal. How did Nick Jackson not actually crack open his shin bone on that spot? It was marvellously done. It informed great drama in that match. Very, very good. I still think my favourite thing is what happened post-match.
Yeah, the post-match was a lot of fun. So Sammy Guevara comes down and he's recording on his phone because he's a fanny.
Vlogger is the technical term.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, the internet. He's got the sock full of baseballs, hasn't he? And he's swinging it around and we're getting the beat down. And then the Rock and Roll Express get involved because they feel slighted because one of them got bumped in the match when a Young Buck went over the top and all this stuff. It's crazy stuff. The Rock and Roll it's a 4-on-3 technically. The baby faces are running wild. Ricky Morton, who's 63 years old, comes over the top rope and does a Canadian Destroyer and then dives to the outside. It's one of the most joyous things I've seen in ages. It was loads of fun. And we're probably getting Proud and Powerful versus the Rock and Roll Express in All Elite Wrestling in 2019.
That is a phenomenal prospect. I was with the guy all the way when he was struggling to get it at first. Then he got it.
Yeah.
And then the suicide dive. Yeah. This was just absolutely phenomenal stuff. Think about this. The Rock and Roll Express, in a 2019 match, did more spectacular stuff than the Young Bucks in a 2019 match. This is the weird world in which we live now.
Wow, what a thing it was. What a
That
hell of a
was
thing
so
it was.
funny, man. I loved it.
Old men in wrestling are the best. Next match tonight was Hangman Page versus Pac. Simple match here, executed really, really well. The simplicity in the brutality, the stiffness with which these guys were hitting each other. Hangman Page, again, hossy as hell for a guy who's maybe, like an inch taller than Pac. Really convincing as he throws him into the barricade and tosses him around, in the words of Adam Nicholas, like an empty tracksuit. There was some really good stuff here. Pac's control segments, really compelling. He really stalks the ring, he menaces, he grinds people down, comes across like his nickname, like a bastard. Again, it was more of an escalation thing. Jim Ross here gets points for doing a little Larry David, a little pretty good. Which was surprising because Jim Ross wasn't very good on this show, unfortunately. But there was all kinds of cool stuff. Towards the end, early on, we saw Hangman Page eat a brain buster onto a steel chair on the outside.
Yes.
Absolutely ridiculous stuff. But the fit, and a particularly cool spot, saw Page go for the Deadeye, his over the back thing, the move formerly known as the Rite of Passage. Pac transitioning seamlessly into the Brutalizer. Looked like the match was going to end there, but Page got to the ropes. In the end, we saw a callback to the previous match. Pac went for the low blow. Page caught it because he's a smart boy and he's learned. He unleashed a few clobbering blows and he finally hit the Deadeye for the victory. Surprising outcome for you, Michael Sidgwick?
A surprising outcome, yes, because they seem to be building Pac with a great deal of conviction on the back of his all-out win over Kenny Omega. I love this match, and what's funny about this match, and it's a testament to the craft of it, is that I wasn't loving it all the way through until they got to that incredible finish. All of the preceding match made sense, which is basically how the greatest matches go. It built steadily into a crescendo, wonderfully worked finish. The physicality of this I adored. It felt like an actual fight. Give me more of that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Loved it myself as well. On to the next match of the night. It was Shawn Spears versus Joey Janela. Started, of course, with a build on an episode of Dark. Weird segment. Joey Janela gets a tooth yanked out, apparently, and a cigarette thrown out in his mouth by Tully Blanchard, all this stuff. This was an interesting match. It was very much a styles clash. Shawn Spears comes in with his sports entertainment style brawling and grappling and all this stuff. And Joey Janela went out there and killed himself because that's what Joey Janela does. Really awesome spot early on as Shawn Spears, who was wearing his No Garbage Wrestling t-shirt in the GCW font as well. That's a nice touch.
Yes,
that's a really nice touch. A really awesome early spot there as Joey goes to dive off the apron, because of course he did, and Spears reverses into a power slam on the mat. Hard hitting stuff, impactful. Another gnarly spot towards the end where Joey, sort of more towards the middle, where Joey gets his hair tied in behind the turnbuckle by Spears. Just Joey Janela is an absolute joy of a wrestler, man. I get why a lot of people don't like him, but for me,
I don't get it at all.
He's chef's kiss.
I think he's so goddamn creative, and it's a bit of an indictment on the finish. Clearly, on the back of the finish, Shawn Spears went over.
Yeah.
With a wonderful assist from Tully Blanchard, that they've got a serious commitment to this guy, and it felt like literally every exciting or creative moment in this match was clearly the work of Joey Janela. Joey Janela versus Tully Blanchard was a better match than Joey Janela versus Shawn Spears.
I would pay money to see that match.
I did enjoy it a lot. I just was a bit flummoxed by the ending because Janela's the star for me in this scenario.
Yeah, interesting little finish there. Tully assisting a spike pile driver on the floor.
Great.
Leading to the running Death Valley driver. The C4 from Shawn Spears finishes off Joey Janela. From there, we moved in from another, Joey Janela had a bad result in that match, and he had a bad result as well because him and Penelope Ford split up earlier this year, and here she is turning up in a backstage segment with her new partner, Kip Sabian. This was a solid little promo from Kip Sabian. He's being interviewed by Golden Boy, who he mistook for an intern. Textbook heel stuff. He spoke about how when he came into AEW, he wanted to go straight down the middle and get the lay of the land, and he aligned himself with the Hybrid 2. That didn't really work out in the ring, and now he's gone out of his way to find someone he has real chemistry with, and that's his real life partner, Penelope Ford. They come together. Penelope Ford says, why be bad when you can be super bad? This was neat. I thought this was pretty decent. Kip Sabian's got a bit of charisma about him.
Yes, neat is the exact word because they've drawn on the real life connection between the storyline. If we're going to be fair and objective journalists, we have been accurately described as AEW marks. Does this not potentially have the same kind of storyline themes and beats as all the cooking stuff we've seen on Raw? This isn't too dissimilar to Lana, Bobby Lashley, and Rusev, is it?
It's not. I guess the difference, there's not really much.
I mean, I don't think that Penelope Ford is going to go to a spa, get a massage by Kip Sabian, and essentially say, via subtext, your cock is a lot deeper and bigger, so you're better at pounding than Joey Janela. I don't think we'll see that, but there are similarities.
Yeah, I think the positioning here was more coincidental than anything else, but we'll see how it pans out.
Yes, I just want to be fair. I'm a fair guy and I get accused of bias.
You're a fair and a lovely guy as well, and a very smart guy, and you should read all of his wonderful articles and watch all of his videos, because we're going to do like 3 today, and it's going to be great. On to the next match. This is the point in the show where I think we looked around the room, watched it with Michael Sidgwick and Benjamin Richardson. We were thinking, hey, it's time for a little spot fest here as SCU defended their tag titles against Private Party and the Lucha Brothers. Wasn't really the case though. It was another match that took a little while to unravel, but unravel it did. Mainly when Rey Fenix decided to go, hey, let's show these guys that I'm one of the best wrestlers in the world, doing all kinds of cool stuff on the rope, springboarding from middle rope to top rope, diving to the outside. Guy's just a human highlight, really. He's one of the most, the narrative around the Lucha Brothers used to be, oh, Pentagon's so charismatic and Pentagon's so awesome. But then you watch Rey Fenix in the ring and you're like, it's like minimum, this guy's top 10 in the world. He's absolutely phenomenal. Cool little match here. We got a particularly great near fall when Mark Quinn hit a shooting star press. Really beautiful, picturesque, got so much height on that shooting star press. But in the end, SCU took the victory. They countered the gin and juice. They hit this SCU later for the victory. Successful title defense. Scorpio Sky, Frankie Kazarian march on, and we should mention the post-match angle real quickly. Lucha Brothers go to beat SCU down. Lights go off, lights come back on. There's a guy in a Pentagon costume. But it's not Chris Jericho this time like it was at All In. It is Christopher Daniels. He is back. He had the fallen angel face paint on his face, and he was all kinds of fired up after being put on the shelf a few short weeks ago.
I was the tiniest disappointed by this match, as you pointed out. It took a little bit of time to unravel, which I thought, layout-wise, I don't think they were expecting this kind of crowd. This crowd was really discerning in contrast to the ultra-receptive, let's go nuts for everything AEW crowds we've seen on Dynamite thus far. I think they maybe misjudged the layout, and I think when the Spot Fest did arrive, and it was exhilarating, it was still ever so slightly rough, so it was hard to invest because I was a bit distracted by the mistimed moments. But with it being Phoenix, and with Phoenix being so goddamn awesome, it was a 3.5 star at the very least, and possibly, if I'm being completely honest, at the most. Bit disappointed also, and I think it's just part and parcel of Phoenix being so goddamn great that there was a mild rejection of SCU after all the great work they've done in the storyline on Dynamite, all the great reactions they got in the very first AEW shows. but you can't put Phoenix in that kind of match and not expect him to be the biggest babyface, I'm afraid.
Because he's the best.
Oh, he's so great.
Absolute
So great.
best. Speaking of so great, how about Riho up next? Defending her AEW Women's World Championship against Emi Sakura. Strong student versus teacher dynamic here going on. As Excalibur mentioned in the commentary, like just before the bell, Sakura and Riho have shared a ring 286 times. That's not to be scoffed at. So, you know, in AEW terms, maybe there was a lack of build. It was kind of thrown together on the back of a couple of, you know, there was this a dark tag match where Sakura scored the pin, and then she was on Dynamite again, obviously. But, you know, what unraveled was another really great match. Like, Riho, again, you said this when we were sitting there after I was watching this, everything that gets hit on her just looks so painful and so brutal and so impactful because she's so small and she bumps so well. But in the end, she took the victory. You know, really fast-paced series of counters towards the end. I believe it was a La Magistral. That's a terrible pronunciation of that move.
That's great. Don't sell yourself short.
For the victory, and in the end, a nice little show of respect from teacher to student as Emi Sakura, who was crying as her name was read out in the beginning. Really good emotional stuff. She helped raise Riho's arm at the end. Great match.
It was great. I just wish the crowd was that little bit more lit up for this because they deserved a reaction. Maybe it's an indictment on AEW for not really plotting out those story beats in the build. I think maybe they over-relied on Riho's emotional connection with the crowd. That finish was so warp speed. My mouth was open the entire time. I thought it was very, very brutal at points. Really well told, dynamic as you touched on. I just wish the audience was there a little bit for them, but I can maybe understand why they were not.
Totally agree, 100%. Let's move on to, I guess, technically the main event of the show because the Lights Out match is unsanctioned. Doesn't happen, doesn't count. Cody challenging for Chris Jericho. Really expertly built match. But was it an expertly executed match? Let's run it down. We got the three judges at ringside. We had Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, and Keiji Muto, who'd obviously been paid in AEW merch. He had the little cap on, he had the t-shirt. He looked like he couldn't be arsed, but it was cool to see him there. And you know, when I saw Keiji Muto at ringside, I was like, well, there's a man who's very fond of a little bit of the bloody in his matches. Cody Rhodes, of course, would later get busted open in this match, taking a rather brutal bump following a failed dive to the outside, landed face first on that raised WCW style stage. Brutal stuff. This was an interesting match. We had MJF coming out with Cody. We had Jake Hager, who eventually got sent to the back for one too many LB suppers by Aubrey Edwards, who is an amazing referee. Love her work in these things. Chris Jericho, a wonderful little touch, had a Le Champion weightlifting belt mimicking Cody. Lots of really smart work here. They had a lot of time to fill, and I feel like they filled it really well en route to Jericho retaining the AEW World Championship over Cody after MJF threw in the towel on behalf of his buddy.
In terms of pure storytelling, this bordered on absolute masterclass. They did literally everything in the exact perfect places, spaces. It was such a well-told story. It was executed so well. They employed every last psychological trick, old school ruse, just the most basic methods of pro wrestling storytelling done perfectly. I was huge on this match. I just thought it was absolutely great.
Yeah.
Absolutely great.
Yeah, really, I was glued to the whole thing throughout. It was really telling in the way the crowd reactions evolved throughout this because they had them really hot early on, then they cooled down quite considerably after the first few minutes, I think it's safe to say, but by the end they were absolutely hooked, and they were especially hooked for this wonderful post-match angle. So while the inner circle are celebrating with a little bit of the bubbly on the ramp, MJF is in the ring. He is absolutely distraught. He has thrown in the towel on his buddy's behalf. Now his buddy, his best friend, the roller coaster, can no longer challenge for the AEW World title ever again. Cody's looking a bit miffed. He's like, oh man, he's looking like he's on boiling point. He's looking pretty raging. But you know what, Cody Rhodes, he's such a nice guy, man.
Best babyface move this.
Best,
so great.
Greatest of all time. Helps him up. MJF's a pit on the floor. He's a mess. He helps him up to his feet. It's okay, buddy. Turns around, we're going to shake hands. He walks away, but when he comes back around, what does MJF do? Kicks him in the family jewels. The Runnels family jewels took one hell of a pounding. MJF completes the heel turn. Boos, asshole chance when he walks up the ramp. He gets a bottle of water thrown at him. plays it like a pro because he's just the best. This heel turn went down an absolute storm. Maybe came a little bit earlier than a lot of people were expecting, myself included, but when it's that over on the show, I think you just have to sit back, look at it and go, hey, that was objectively great.
I've got 3 takeaways. 1, the execution was incredible. 2, if there's any concern about them doing this too early, just wait until Thursday morning when MJF has cut his explanatory promo on next week's Dynamite. It is going to be the greatest promo ever, and they've almost just done the greatest promo ever last week. 3rd one, if they'd continued the storyline after the towel throw, maybe, and a babyface needs to be totally smart, maybe Cody would have seemed a bit too thick to believe in this guy after what was clearly a bit of a I'm getting you out of the way so I can get to the title route. I thought this was phenomenally well done. I didn't think you could get a pro wrestling match like this anymore. I was wrong. Love being wrong, even though I'm a bit of a smart arse most of the time.
Yeah, we take victory laps when we're right because that's how it works.
Why not?
That's how the game works. Anyway, on to our final match of the night. Lights out, unsanctioned. This was certainly a thing. This was insane. This was, for all intents and purposes, a mainstream American wrestling promotion running a death match.
It was way worse than that in terms of how violent it was for me.
It was some of the imagery in this was insane. So 2 minutes in, you got Jon Moxley going, hey, what's the exact quote here? It's time for some effing garbage wrestling. 2 minutes later, he is taking, in a rather poetic spot, a double stomp with a bin on his chest. That's just, I love that. That's wonderful. From there, things just got crazy. We got a barbed wire bat that was battered over Kenny Omega. It was raked across skin. We got the barbed wire broom that Kenny Omega swept across Jon Moxley, hit him on the back of the head, busted him all kinds of open. Both guys are bleeding. The wounds did close up. We got a bag of broken glass, presumably from the same table that Kenny was paradigm shifted through on Dynamite a few weeks ago. That was used to really interesting effect as well. We got all kinds of moves on it. We got a submission attempt on it, during which Moxley dragged his own body across the broken glass to get to the rope break. Brutal stuff. Match goes all the way to the stage. Kenny calls out all his buddies who bring out this almost like trampoline of barbed wire. It's like cross-hatched and all this.
He said, bring the thing.
But he said, bring the thing, yeah. It's just, what a line that is. That ended up with Moxley superplexing Omega onto that. That wasn't the finish, though. We got a paradigm shift. A V-trigger through a light panel, I guess it was, at the stage. All the way back to the ring, we got a gold chain involved because chain wrestling, very clever. And in the end, we got them tearing up the ring. Moxley pulling, removing all the ties, removing the curtain, pulling up the mat, pulling up the padding, all kinds of hard bumping, impactful moves on those wooden boards. Kenny missed a Phoenix splash in one of the craziest, most sickening bumps I've maybe ever seen. He hit Omega, he hit Moxley with a paradigm shift that Moxley kicked out of, but in the end, Moxley hit the paradigm shift on the board. 1, 2, 3. This was an interesting match because I think it was the first time we fundamentally disagreed on professional wrestling. I didn't like this at all.
I adored it because I'm sick. First of all, I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley for doing so much insane stuff over 40 minutes. You've just increased our ad revenue for the video. Thank you very much. We could not be more appreciative of that. I looked on my timeline immediately after this match finished, like very influential wrestling figures who we always thank as being great sources for our news videos, the likes of Brian Alvarez and Sean Ross Sapp, all said similar sentiments. Not my cup of tea, not my cup of tea. The audience reaction, my God, people were actually visibly disturbed by this. People were visibly disgusted by this. There was weird pockets of silence that for me really helped the spectacle. I'd rather that than people just mindlessly popping for the violence because it has no gravity if you do that. All of this converged to create this unforgettable spectacle. I adored it. I think I got just enough of Kenny Omega's lightning fast, convoluted reversal sequences to make this a Kenny Omega match that he still was nowhere near prepared for because it was Jon Moxley's match. I thought the the suspension you get in the suspense you get in a death match, all of that was really, really well done. I love the idea of Kenny Omega with this affected, pretentious art character building a massive thing and making his mates come out and get it. It's exactly the sort of thing he would do in character. From a storytelling perspective, I adored the fact that he missed the Phoenix Splash in such gruesome, disgusting fashion, because the story of his character is he's completely lost himself. He's completely lost his mind. That was his one thin connection to his old self, and it disintegrated, as did his face. I thought this was all kinds of wonderful, excessive in the extreme, obviously, divisive as hell, absolutely unforgettable, and Jon Moxley, if you're a little bit like my sensitive mate Andy Murray here, a little bit concerned about the violence, he said on Dynamite, you are going to see a glorious level of wrestling violence not seen in decades. I don't think the decades qualifier was required. In living memory, I don't think I've ever seen anything as insane as that. I love it, but I'm a sick guy.
And that's why pro wrestling is subjective.
It's awesome, man.
Because I didn't have a good time with this match at all.
Loved it, man.
I just don't like death matches, man. That's all it is. That's all it is. That's all it is. I'll take head bumps. I'll take neck stuff. I'll take all those things on the exposed boards. I don't mind all that. But when it comes to broken glass and barbed wire, I am the biggest coward in the room. Anyway, thank you for joining us on this 400-minute episode of what went down at AEW Full Gear, almost as long as the Lights Out match itself.
Bit of Bunsen, yeah.
Yeah.
Ad revenue Bunsen. Nice Atlanta. Bunsen Banner. So.
Cockney rhyming slang. Thank you for joining us, everybody. You can follow us on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. We'll be back a little bit later on with the news, or it might be earlier, depending on the upload schedule. Made a balls up of this, haven't I? You can follow Michael Sidgwick on Twitter at
Sidgwick.
You can follow me on Twitter at Andy H. Murray. The H stands for
Hairless.
Hairless. Accurate. Bye.